Hey there, in today's video I'm gonna show you the difference between pass by value and pass by reference when we are passing an object or a standard data type to a function block or a method. So first of all, what does pass by value mean? When we are passing, let's say, a standard data type by value, we are creating a copy of the passed object or standard data type. This copy has its own address, and any operation affecting the object inside of the function or function block will happen to the copy and not to the object itself. So we are not gonna change the object itself, we're just gonna change the copy. This is the main difference between pass by value and pass by reference. So when we have a pass by reference, we are not creating a copy of the passed object, we are working with the object directly. So we are passing, this is a pass by reference, is also called pass by address, and we work directly with the address of the passed object, so with the object itself. And any operations done on the object inside of the function or function block will affect it directly. We are using the pass by reference when we want to modify the object from inside the function block or the method, or when the object itself is too big. Let's say when we pass a normal integer variable and we don't want to change this variable from inside the function, we can pass it by value. But let's say if we have a very big object like a function block that has an array of strings, 10,000 elements, so we are passing 810 bytes. So such an object we don't want to pass by value, we want to pass such an object by reference. But let's take a look. I have created one function, pass by value. In CODESYS, when we want to pass by value, we have just a normal variable input, a name for the variable, and the type that we want to pass by value. So I want to pass an integer variable, and that's why I have some input and the type integer. This pointer here is just to get the address of the input variable, so of this variable in ivar, just to show you that this variable, the int ivar, will have a totally different address as the passed variable. Here I have another pointer from outside the function, so in my main program, where I'm gonna get the address of this variable that I'm gonna pass to the function by value, so I can show you that this variable will have a totally different address. So let me start my POC, and I'm just gonna show you this difference. The function that I've created is doing actually nothing too special. I'm just adding 1 to the input variable. So let's log in and get a look at the situation. So this first function I'm passing by value. I'm gonna set a breakpoint here and let's get it. So this is the address of our ISOM_var, so in our main program. I'm gonna write this address here so you can see it. And when we jump inside the function, this pointer is pointing to the input variable. So you can see that this input variable, after its creation, has a totally different address as the variable that we are passing. So this is the local copy, and we are modifying in the function only the local copy. So I can count +1, it doesn't really matter, you can see we have 1, but when we return, the value will stay 0 because we have only modified the local variable and not the passed variable that we are passing. So this is pass by value. We are modifying only the local copy. So we are creating a local copy and modifying this copy. So it doesn't really matter how many times I'm going to call this function. Every time we are modifying only the local copy. And because a function in CODESYS doesn't have any memory, every time when we return from the function, this ivar is destroyed, so the memory is released, and that's why we are starting from 0. So if this was a function block, the function block has its own memory, and we're gonna count +1 every time. But because this is a function, we start from 0 every time, but it doesn't really matter. So again, it's very important, you're changing only the local copy when you're passing by value. So you're creating a local copy, that copy has a totally different address, and you're changing only the local copy inside of the function or function block. That's the when we have pass by value. So when we have pass by reference, as I said, we are working directly with the address of the object or the standard data type, UDT or whatever. And we are modifying directly this variable or the object that we are passing. There are 3 ways how we can do that in CODESYS. The first way is when we have passed the variable by pointer, and this is how it's done. The second way is passed by reference, and the third way is when we have a var in out. So let's take a look at pass by pointer. So this is the function, and as you can see, as an input parameter, I only have a pointer to int. So this pointer is pointing to the address or to the variable that we're passing, and this is it. So we're getting the address of the ISOM variable, and so we're pointing from inside the function, we're pointing to this variable. And to show you that, I'm gonna get the address of the dereferenced variable. So when we dereference the pointer, we're gonna see the address and the address of the pointer itself, just to show you that. And then again, after dereferencing, I'm just gonna count +1. It's very important when you pass by reference to check for a 0 pointer if you use pass by pointer. So let's log in and see the result. I'm gonna set a breakpoint again, start my POC, and as you can see, this is the address of the variable, this is the same address, and let's jump into the function. This is the address, so the pointer is pointing to this address, so the pointer is pointing to the variable. Now you can see this is the pointer itself, the local variable of the pointer, so the input variable, and you can see that this pointer has its own address. So this is the pointer itself, and this is where we are pointing. So you can see that the pointer is pointing to the address of the variable after dereferencing, but the pointer itself has a totally different address. Now we can just execute, and as you can see, after dereferencing, we are counting +1. So our variable will have the value 1 because we are working directly with the object. We are modifying the object from inside the function. And when we execute the function, it doesn't matter how many times, we're gonna count +1 after every execution of the function. So you can see, and the variable is changed, so we are affecting directly the passed variable. This is when we have pass by pointer. When you have pass by pointer, of course, you can pass a pointer, not the address like here. You can pass a pointer directly. So this is the pointer. You can see this is pointer to int, so you can pass the address of the int and you can pass a pointer to int directly. But when you pass the pointer, you should definitely point first to something. So if you don't point to anything, I'm going to show you once this, you're going to crash your program if you dereference the pointer. So let me set a breakpoint here, and you can see I'm pointing to 0. I'm not pointing to any variable. That is why my function will return 1 as an error code and jump out. If we dereference, if we are in this row and dereference and assign a value to this 0 address, we're gonna receive an exception. So don't do that. Now we are going to return, and you can see we have an error code 1 and nothing changed. I can comment this just to show you the difference. Let's do it one time, just to see, so you can see it. So like this. Let me comment. I'm gonna log in. Yes. And I'm gonna call the function again. And as you can see, we receive an exception because the pointer is pointing to 0. The pointer has its own address, that's still the case, but it's pointing to 0. So after dereferencing it, the system crashed because we're pointing to 0 and we want to assign a value to this. So don't do that. Now I'm gonna log out. I'm gonna correct the function again as it was, like this. Perfect. So if you pass a pointer, as I said, directly, you should first point to the address of the variable. But if you ask me, you can just write the address operator and then the variable. It's easy to spot it. And this is how we would look the function if we pass a pointer directly. Again, this pointer is pointing to the variable, and they are sharing. So the pointer from inside the function is receiving the address that this pointer holds, so the variable. And as you can see, the variable is counting. Every cycle is counting +1. But it's your decision. I prefer the address variant when I'm coding. Now, let's stop this. And I'm going to show you the pass by reference. When we have pass by reference, is totally identical. This is pass by reference. We have a var input, and we are not typing anything. We are typing just reference to int. So again, the pointer has its own address, but when we have a reference, we are working directly with the address of the variable. So this is just a alias of the variable that we're passing. So another name. Now let's take a look of the function. This is it. And as you can see, I'm passing directly the variable like the pass by value. But because this is a reference, we don't need the address. The reference is getting the address directly. So let's log in. And as you can see, the variable is counting. I'm going to do a warm reset just to start it from the beginning. Set a breakpoint here, and let's jump in. This is the address again. When we jump in, we are checking if the reference is valid. Because if the reference is not valid, so we're gonna crash again. We're gonna receive an exception like with the pointer. Here we don't need to dereference it. We can just assign the value. This is the better way as the pointer. And as you can see, this reference, the input variable that I am having, has exactly the same address as the variable. So like this, and the dereferencing pointer. So we are working directly with the address of the variable. And after each call, we're just gonna count +1, and you can see that. Now, as I said, if you pass a reference directly, like this, reference to int, I'm passing the reference directly to the function, you can do that. But if this is a 0 reference, like this, now this reference has no variable, you're gonna receive an exception if you don't check if this reference is a valid reference. So let's start. I'm gonna set a breakpoint here, and we can jump in. So we're checking, is this reference valid? If not, we're gonna return an error. Of course, I can do the same thing just to show you the result. So I'm just gonna comment this login again. Let's do it with download, it doesn't really matter. And when I start my POC, you can see we receive an exception because the reference has no address. So we are assigning again to 0 somewhere in the memory. That's why we are receiving an exception. Now, let me correct this one again, like this, and perfect. Now, if you want to pass the reference, you can assign some variable to the reference like this. This is equivalent to address of the verb, so to this one, this is equivalent. And of course you can pass the reference to the function. It doesn't really matter how you're gonna do that, the result will be the same, but I will say you should pass directly the variable. Let's check it, and as you can see, the sum var is adding 1 on every call. We can jump into the function with a breakpoint. We are checking the reference is valid. So again, you can see the address is the same as the variable that we're passing. So we are adding +1 on every call. That's it. The third way how we can do that, how we can pass by reference in CODESYS, is with a var in out, which is exactly the same as pass by reference. So here you can see we declare var in out, and we have the input variable. And again, we should check for a valid reference. If not, we're gonna return. And again, I'm getting the address of the var in out that I'm passing. Let's set a breakpoint here. Let's log in, set a breakpoint, and I'm gonna show you this. That is absolutely the same as the pass by reference. Absolutely the same. Now, let's set a breakpoint here, jump in, check if there is a valid reference. If it is, you can see, let me copy the address, is exactly the same as the input variable and the reference and the dereferencing pointer. Absolutely the same address. Now we're gonna count every time we jump into the function. We are just gonna add +1. Of course, here you can pass a reference directly, like in the first case. And if you don't check again if the var in out is a valid reference, like here, let me comment this check like this. I'm gonna log in. I'm gonna start my POC just to show you that, and as you can see, we're gonna receive an exception because the var in out is nothing else as a reference. So it's exactly the same as the reference. Doesn't really matter if you, I prefer the first way, so I prefer to have an input variable and say reference to, but you can use the var in out from CODESYS, it doesn't really matter. The result will be exactly the same. So let me comment this away. And here you can see I'm creating a reference exactly the same as the previous time and passing the whole reference. But of course you can pass the variable directly. And you can see we're counting up. That's the main difference. So those are the three ways how you can pass by reference object or standard data type by reference, by pointer, and the two ways by reference. Sometimes you would pass an object by reference not because you want to modify it from inside the function block or method, but only because it's too big. In this case, you would like to show the other programmers or to not mistake and do an error. You would like to declare this reference as a constant reference. So this is done with a var in out, but a constant var in out. So the first var in out is a reference again, but we can write and read to the object that we're passing. So we can write and read to the first object. But the second object is a constant var in out. So we can only read from this object. And if we try to write something to it, we're gonna receive an error at compile time. So when I compile my POC, you can see we receive an error directly. So if we delete the constant, you can see everything's okay. We can modify this object as well. Now this works only with the var in out. So if I have a normal var input and reference to int like this, I can compile it and I'm not gonna receive any error, and I can modify the object. So if you want to the object to only have the read status, you should declare this as a var in out but a constant like this, and this will be only from type int, var int out to int. And as you can see, we receive an error because I want to modify this object. We can read from it like this. Let's make it like this, change the places of those two, like this. You can see, sorry, this is the same object, like this. We can read from it, but we cannot assign any values to it. So that's it, that's the constant. I wanted to show you what the difference we can have when between pass by value and pass by reference. As I said, I have created one function block where have some array, 10,000 elements of strings, so 81, every element has 81 bytes, multiplied with 10,000, we have 810,000 bytes. So this is, let's say, a large object. For this object, I have two functions. The first one, we have a reference to such an object, so from this type. And in the second one, I'm passing the object by value. I have a start and stop time here, like this. Let me delete the comments. And with the sys time get microseconds, I'm gonna start a time. I'm gonna call the object by value, and then I'm gonna get a timestamp as an end time and write it to results. So the end time minus the start time. The same thing I'm gonna do for the pass by reference, and you can see the time difference. Now let's log in. I'm going to set a breakpoint here just to show you that. And we only have one call because we have 0. So let's hit play. And as you can see, when we have passed by value, we receive almost 800 microseconds for one call. And by pass by reference, we have 170 microseconds. That's okay, but this is only one call, so we have 4 times more time when we pass by value. But let's say we want to call the object 100 times, or we are calling 100 times the object in our program. Let's take a look. As you can see, we need 21,000 microseconds, and here we need only 17,000 microseconds. So when you pass a large object, so when you pass UDTs, user-defined types, or function blocks, you should pass them by reference. If you don't want to change them and you want only to read from them, pass them as a var in out, but a constant, as I showed you in this function. So guys, this is it for today. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, give us some thumbs up and have a good one.